Accounts and Allocation Committee, FAC, which comes together the third week of every month to do this. Well, now joining me in the studio to look at this particular topic is Wale Oluwo, a financial analyst. Thank you so much, Wale, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, lawmakers, analysts, experts, they all say that this formula is 12 years old now, is in need of a drastic need for change and a drastic review. And of course, we do know that, especially for the states, they've never been happy with the sharing formula and said what the federal government gets in the first place is way too much. They say that, look, the bulk of the population are the grassroots level, and we know that the state and local government are the closest to the people, so they say they should get more. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, before we go into that, let us even understand what this issue of revenue has been. Even before the creation of Nigeria, it's always been contentious. And it's like that in virtually every crime. Let's put it this way. Revenue is at the heart of economic development. And it is how you manage the revenue that will determine how the various components of the nation will rise up to the challenges of development. I'll put it this way to you. The idea of the revenue allocation formula came about during the General Danjuma's commission. But before I talk about General Danjuma's commission, I would like to let the public know that we have had about 8 to 9 commissions since the Richard's Constitution. Richard's Constitution was in 1946, and that is the first time Nigeria adopted a regional approach to governance and development. And since Richard's Commission, maybe I don't know their names of it, but I know we've had the Hicks Commission in 1951, the Chicks Commission in 1953, the Reisman Commission in 1958, the Baines Commission in 1964, the Dinos Commission in 1968, which was rejected by the federal government. Then you had the Aboyades Commission in 1977, the Okigbo Commission in 1980, and the Danjuma Commission in 1988.
All set up to review or to be...
all set up to review how we
should share
this cake that we talked about. Now, it was the Danjuma's Commission that recommended the creation of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. And out of all these commissions, I will just direct our attention to 3 of them. The first, of course, is the Reisman's Commission. In 1958, that was the first time we had population being introduced as one of the bases for the revenue allocation process. We never had it. The first ones were based on derivation, fiscal autonomy, and all that. But the second one I want to address the minds to is the Baines Commission in 1964. And that was the one that started saying, let us allocate on the basis of region. So the North was given 42%, the East was given 30%, the West was given 20%, and then the Midwest was given 8%. Having said this, let's come back to present time. What do we have now? We have a formula that says the federal controls 52.6%, the states have about 26.7%, the local about 20%, and then after that, probably you have the derivation and probably some other special funds to add up. The question is this. The percentage of the federal government having this 52-point-something% is unusual if you look at the history of Nigeria. Because Nigeria itself is a negotiated entity. We still have people living in Nigeria today who were not born Nigerians. If you were born before 1960, there was no Nigeria. So it was the federating unit that came and formed Nigeria. So whatever is, the federal government belongs to the entire federating unit. Now, 52% appears high, in my own opinion. It was justified then when we had a development model where the federal government was producing virtually every utility in Nigeria. The federal government was the only one flying aeroplanes under Nigeria Airways. The federal government was the only one doing railway system. The federal government was the only one doing newspapers and stuff like that, television, right? And then you had the federal government being the only one providing telecom services, electricity, oil and gas, and all that. So, under that situation, you can excuse the federal government for having 50-60%.
Yeah, because it obviously has more bills to pay.
Yeah, it has a share subvention to so many parastatals that we were calling nascent industries. They can't stand on their own, so we had to use our revenues to support them, although a lot of them have failed now. So it meant that that policy was a monumental failure. But that has passed. We're now looking at present. Now that since the mid-80s, when we started implementing the deregulation, you know, the structural adjustments, concessioning, privatization, and the rest of them, a lot of these services have moved away from the federal government to the private sector, which now means that whatever the federal government is controlling now, there may be no justification for it. In fact, I think there is no justification for it anymore. So we must continue to advocate a devolution of the resources to the states so that Nigeria can develop from bottom up. We cannot develop from top down. That is one. Number two, the Revenue Allocation, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. I'm surprised because if you look at the act that set them up, the act says that any revenue allocation that is in force should be allowed to succeed for at least 5 years. It can last for more than 5 years. But because of the dynamic changes in the environment, and the act recognizes that, it says, fine, I mean, the minimum time you can change this revenue allocation is 5 years. After 5 years, you are free to change it. But we've not done that in 12 years or more.
Is it a very rigorous process?
No, it's not a rigorous process.
So why do you think we haven't done that why do you think it's lasted up to 12 years?
I think it's an issue of burden of who is injured in this equation. The federal government is not going to move to propose a revenue allocation formula, but because it is the one benefiting from the status quo.
But the others are not happy.
Those that are injured,
so why did the states come up with?
No, if they decided to be quiet, the local government and the states, let's even say the states, because for me, revenue allocation ordinarily should be between the federal and the states. That's my personal view. Because in a federating unit, local government should be administrative units of the states. And revenue is shared between the federal and the states, and then anybody can create as many local government as you want. It's your business. Now, coming back to the substance of the issue. The states and the local governments have chosen to be quiet all along. And they are the injured parties in this entire equation. The major attempt that was made earlier was by the Governors Forum when they set up the Babatunde Raji Fashional panel that's under the Lagos State Governor to propose a new formula. That was done. We've not seen anything come out of it.
But let's look at the new formula that they proposed.
They proposed a new formula, but I've not seen the advocacy that attempts to move that formula from proposal
to give teeth to it. But let's look at what they proposed for the new formula. Federal government 35%, states 42%, local governments 23%.
It makes a lot of sense to me, honestly.
So how did they even arrive at this in the first place? Because one looks at the figures and says, obviously, this is a significant climb for the states from 26.7, which is the current formula for states, to 42%.
Yeah.
Why? What's the justification for that?
The justification is this. If you look at development in Nigeria, you will see that it's been